Hello beloved souls, thank you for tuning into the Spiritual Podcasts channel. This channel is all about good vibes, positive energy, and meaningful conversations. To keep this space welcoming for everyone, we kindly ask that comments stay respectful, kind, and in the spirit of the content shared here. We reserve the right to delete any comments that don't align with this intention. No hard feelings, just protecting the vibe. Thanks for being here and spreading the light. Please be cautious of anyone claiming to represent Spiritual Podcast and asking you for money, donations, or personal information. We will never ask you for money through comments, messages, or DMs. All official updates and content come only from this channel. If you see suspicious activity, please report it immediately. Stay safe and thank you for being part of our community. If you enjoy the video and its content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Please be kind to other viewers of the channel. The video is about to start.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are digging into a topic that has, well, it's exploded in cultural relevance over the last decade, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
But which, thankfully, our source material suggests is finally achieving a necessary maturity. We're talking about self-love, or auto-amor. And specifically, the subtle but really powerful shift from, that manic, performative self-care to something rooted more in serenity, tranquility, and crucially profound clarity.
Yeah, and that's such an important distinction because the older model, it often looked a bit like a consumer activity, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like buy this journal, go on this retreat, post the perfect photo.
Right, that Instagram version.
Exactly. But the current evolving discourse, which is what we're really unpacking today, it treats self-love as this profound maturation process. It moves away from isolation, definitely, and more toward clarity about personal boundaries, yes, but also collective growth.
Okay.
It sort of acknowledges that everyone is navigating their own really difficult inner landscapes. And the clarity, well, it's far from instant. It actually takes dedicated effort.
Exactly. And maybe the most vital insight right out of the gate is rejecting that fast food approach to personal and emotional development.
Oh, that's good. Emotional fast food.
Yeah. If you're expecting emotional maturity to arrive as quickly and easily as, say, ordering a Big Mac, you are going to be perpetually disappointed, just stuck.
You really are.
Yeah.
Stuck in a cycle of immediate gratification followed by deep self-criticism. That analogy is so powerful because for too long, progress, spiritual, psychological, whatever, it was pitched as an instant solution.
Like a quick fix.
We were sold this idea of a finished product delivered quickly. But the sources, they remind us of a timeless truth. Haste is the enemy of the meal, and maybe more critically, haste is the enemy of evolution. Our inner evolution just needs time. Time to process, integrate, consolidate new behaviors.
And the practical result of needing that time is, well, you have to get your hands dirty, don't you? We're talking about learning to actually manipulate the ingredients of your life, not just reading the instruction manual once and thinking you've got it.
Yeah, you have to accept that making mistakes isn't some optional sidebar. It's the essential crucible for eventually getting it right.
Right.
You have to mess up the recipe a few times.
Right. To become a skilled chef in your own life.
Precisely. So our mission today is really to unpack the necessary effort involved here to distinguish between that tempting fantasy of idealization and the tough reality of true self-love, and maybe identify some practical daily steps toward dynamic self-acceptance.
Okay, dynamic self-acceptance. I like that.
Yeah, and the core paradox, I think, is that real, sustainable progress requires both focused effort and the generous gift of time. You need both.
Haste is the enemy. Got it. Okay, so if we're going to discuss the effort required for auto-amor, we probably have to start by tearing down some of the false standards, right? Those often external benchmarks we've been given.
Absolutely.
Let's look at this implicit and explicit discourse that constantly batters the modern psyche. What is that exactly?
Well, this discourse is relentless and it's insidious because it's not just ads. It's social media. It's those success narratives we hear. It's, well, everything around us.
Everywhere.
It demands that every single individual must be a manifest success, must be brilliant, have a platform, millions of followers, maintain constant visible perfection. It's exhausting. It's a 247 mandate.
Wow. And the result of that mandate is this widespread anguish, isn't it? A kind of psychic pain.
Definitely.
So we have to ask the critical question our sources highlight. Why are so many people who actually reach this supposed other side of the rainbow's pot, extreme wealth, beauty, power, visibility, why aren't they happy?
Right.
Why do they so often undergo this psychological deconstruction, suffering from anxiety, depression, burnout right at the peak of their external success?
It's because they're believing a lie. Simple as that, maybe. The lie says that the destination, the external achievement, is the endpoint of happiness, or even worse, that it's the prerequisite for self-worth. It suggests self-love is this conditional reward you get after you've checked all the societal boxes. But true auto-amor, it has to be an internal state, completely independent of visibility or success.
Okay, so that brings us directly to a key psychological barrier then. The idealized self.
The fantasy version.
Right. Many people, maybe even most, create this fantasy figure as like their primary motivator. Let's call it the X-Men version of themselves.
Yeah, I remember this specific patient anecdote that illustrates it perfectly. He was really struggling with severe self-doubt, yet he'd constructed this intensely detailed image of his perfect future self.
Wow. What did it look like?
Well, this idealized version, he explained, had already completed a postdoc at Harvard, was fluent in 6 languages, always highly assertive, possessed absolutely zero doubts about his future, and even had a deeper, more authoritative voice.
Oh my goodness.
It was a composite character built entirely out of perceived lacks and desires.
And that is painfully relatable, I think, for almost all of us. We hold that plus version, that X-Men version in our heads, thinking this hyper-perfect future self is what will finally drive us toward change.
We tell ourselves, I'll start working when I feel like that person.
Exactly. But here's the crucial psychological realization that just flips the entire script. This idealized X-Men version is not a motivator.
Absolutely not. It is, tragically, a mechanism of daily humiliation. It doesn't point toward where you're going. It functions solely to tell you exactly where you are not.
Ouch.
Every single day, that perfect, doubt-free vision looks at the real you, the flawed, struggling, maybe procrastinating you, and essentially says, look at who you are not, you idiot, you incompetent, incapable human being. It just deepens the self-loathing.
It just digs the hole deeper. It weaponizes perfection against actual progress.
Yeah, it sets a standard that is, by definition, impossible to reach today.
So our source material suggests this clarifying hypothetical test. Ask that X-Men ideal to incarnate, to actually come down and live your real messy life for just 1 week.
Right. Can that perfect, doubt-free version withstand your daily struggles, your inevitable mistakes, the sheer courage it takes just to show up when you feel utterly defeated?
And the answer is almost invariably no. That fantasy perfection, it only works in scripted narratives, like in the world of Harry Potter, where challenges arrive exactly when they're supposed to, and the solution is always magically available.
Yeah, not real life.
Real life is constructed through daily, constant, often grinding effort, through failure and correction. The fantasy self just cannot handle the necessary messiness required for real growth because it was built precisely on the premise of avoiding that messiness.
Okay, but I want to pause here for a sec. If we completely dismantle the idealized self, how do we stop ourselves from just sinking into complacency? Don't we still need those psychological concepts of the real self and the ideal self?
That's a fair question.
The stuff that's part of the psychological law of progress. To provide necessary expectations and goals, we need some kind of target. Right. You are absolutely right. The ideal self is necessary because it provides direction, like a compass point. The problem isn't having expectations. The problem is making self-love conditional upon meeting those expectations.
Conditional love. There it is.
Precisely. That is the core human error we have to address. We make self-love perpetually distant by setting these conditions. I will finally love myself only when I have successfully forgiven myself for that past mistake. Or
when I achieve a perfect body.
Exactly. Or when I become a better Christian person, whatever.
Yeah.
By making self-love conditional, we keep it forever out of reach, stuck in the perpetual future tense.
You're essentially saying, I am unlovable now.
But I might be lovable later if I just fix X, Y, and Z. It's a setup for failure.
Okay, so to really grasp the profound damage of this conditional self-love, the sources invite us to contrast it with the concept of unconditional love. Often, this is talked about through the lens of divine love or the love of God.
Right. Think about that feeling, that profound psychological constraint that can sometimes arise when you confront a concept of truly unconditional love.
Constraint? How so?
Well, maybe you're having a terrible day. You feel angry, you're self-loathing, you feel like a total failure, yet you might sense a presence or an energy that loves you regardless. That love feels constraining, almost uncomfortable, precisely because our human model of love for ourselves and others is almost always transactional.
Because it's usually conditional, we expect to earn it.
We absolutely expect to earn it. So if the divine, or whatever you conceive that to be, loves us even in our self-loathing, It means we don't have to be perfect to receive love.
And therefore,
We don't have to be perfect to love ourselves. But when we try to apply that conditional, transactional model to our relationships with other people, we run straight into this pitfall of narcissus.
okay, explain the narcissus connection.
Well, consider the anecdote of the friend who thought he had found the woman of his life. And why? Because she liked the exact same Netflix series, listened to the same obscure music, finished his sentences.
They could basically read each other's minds.
Exactly.
Which on the surface sounds like the ultimate connection, doesn't it? Total harmony.
It sounds harmonious, but our sources categorize this type of relationship as, well, a bore, or what they call the lizard conversation. Conversa dialectics.
Lizard conversation, what on earth?
It's when nothing new is added, there's no divergent thought. If both people think exactly the same way, if the opinions are identical, the tastes never clash.
Yeah.
You add nothing new to the shared space, just an agreement.
And if you add nothing new,
There's no progress. You're simply trapped in this dynamic where you're seeing narcissus reflected in you.
it's just an echo chamber.
That's the psychological trap. Growth only comes from difference, from divergence. It's actually a good thing when one person likes a different color or a different series, because that divergence forces the creation of new synaptic connections in the brain.
You have to process something different.
You have to process an alien viewpoint.
Yep.
You have to learn the diplomacy of difference. If there's no disagreement, there's none of that necessary friction for evolution.
Okay, so if the perfect loves the imperfect, if we accept that premise, then the only viable path forward is to love the imperfect self. The self that's right in the middle of the mess, still working toward that X-Men version, but not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
How do we hold that tension? How do we love the imperfect self without collapsing into apathy or just giving up?
This is where we introduce a really critical concept from Joanna de Angelis: dynamic resignation.
Dynamic resignation. Okay, that sounds like a paradox.
It does, doesn't it? But it's profound because it immediately rejects passive resignation, which is paralysis, stagnation, just giving up.
So how can you be resigned and dynamic at the same time?
Okay, so you're resigned to your current state of being, the imperfect, struggling self. But you remain dynamic in your effort to transform it.
Ah, I see.
It means looking at what you've achieved today, recognizing that it was the fruit of great, sometimes painful effort, and accepting it with gratitude. But simultaneously, you know you must continue transforming. You don't stop there.
So it's accepting the present moment without halting the movement toward the future.
Exactly. It acknowledges the success of the journey so far, but doesn't mistake a resting point for the final destination.
Okay.
And this principle really reinforces the necessity of difficulty. We have to understand that growth actually requires instigation and provocation.
Right.
The sources remind us, no muscle grows without exercise, no brain is rejuvenated without provocation, no spirit advances without instigation. If everything is always easy, we just stop growing.
It's a very human tendency, isn't it? When things feel too easy, we actually get suspicious. We think something must be wrong.
We do. We've been conditioned to believe that if the answer comes too easily, it must be a trick question or some kind of trap. We're almost trained to value the effort itself. So that dynamic dissatisfaction, that insatisfaction tranquila, that tranquil dissatisfaction we'll touch on later, it's vital. You're grateful for the effort and the strength you gained, but you use that resulting strength to move on to the next harder challenge.
That is dynamic self-love in action.
That's it.
Okay, moving from the sort of philosophical side to the practical. If self-love is dynamic and unconditional, how do we actually operationalize it? How do we do it?
Right. Well, our sources break self-esteem down into 3 critical dimensions that need constant attention: cognitive, emotive, and behavioral.
Cognitive, emotive, behavioral. Got it. Let's start with cognitive, self-concept.
Okay, so cognitive is fundamentally how you define yourself. It's the narrative you carry about who you are. The Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa, he captured this struggle beautifully. He wrote, "I am something between what I wanted to be and what others wanted to make of me."
Wow. That perfectly encapsulates the tension, doesn't it? Between the two standards we're always trying to reconcile.
Exactly. We live between those 2 huge pressures.
Yeah.
The external locus and the internal locus.
And explain those a bit more.
Okay, so the external standard dictates who you should be, what perfect body shape, what specific clothes, what language, what politics, all the things supposedly required to receive external acceptance.
Okay.
This external standard often requires you to seek constant approval, what the source material refers to as the chancellor.
Chancellor. What's that?
A chancellor is like a formal stamp of approval, a seal of validation. The external locus demands that stamp from the outside world to validate your existence.
Right. And the internal locus, conversely,
is what you truly desire, what aligns with your deepest values, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Okay.
So the challenge lies in balancing the two extremes. On one side, you have the despersonalizado individual, the depersonalized one, who constantly seeks external validation for everything.
Like, should I go to the cafeteria now? Should I wear this shirt? What do you think of this job?
Exactly. Perpetually in doubt, needing the chancellor of others for every tiny decision.
And on the opposite side,
You have the individual who swings the other way entirely, never asks for help, refuses all input, maybe believes they're so above others that no one could possibly advise them, they just shut down all external information.
Right. So equilibrium requires acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Accepting external input when it adds clarity or value or necessary critical feedback, but prioritizing your internal conviction when it serves your long-term mature self better.
Okay.
We saw this illustrated in that anecdote about family communication styles.
Oh, yeah. The source contrasted two families. One where people rarely said what they actually thought,
Leading to massive internal resentment and this huge emotional debt.
and another family where everyone just spoke their mind, accepted the temporary conflict, and moved on quickly without these lasting wounds.
Right. It involves learning to communicate your true feelings while they're relevant, and crucially, not pulling out the sarasa, that credit report, of past grudges during a present conflict.
Okay, explain sarasa for people who might not know.
Right. So sarasa in some countries is like the credit bureau and tracks your entire financial history, listing every single error or missed payment, sometimes going back years.
So when you pull out the sarasa of a relationship,
You're not discussing the present disagreement at all. You're listing every single grievance from the last 10 years to use as ammunition. That behavior guarantees conflict never resolve.
and it definitely shows a lack of respect, both for the relationship and for yourself, really.
Absolutely. Now let's move to the emotive aspect. How you feel in relationships and especially how you process feelings of exclusion or indifference. This is where the projection trap lives.
Ah, the projection trap sounds ominous.
It is. And it's a massive energy drain on self-love. So much available energy for self-care for actually moving forward gets wasted by projecting old childhood traumas onto present figures.
We subconsciously try to resolve old wounds by casting new actors in the old play.
Precisely. We see the pattern constantly, don't we? The overbearing boss becomes the dysfunctional father figure.
Or the indifferent spouse represents the unloving mother.
Exactly. We're constantly cycling through new characters, desperately trying to force a different ending onto that foundational trauma.
And this cycle is persistent, right? The universe, or your path, kind of ensures you keep finding new versions of the old trauma.
Because you haven't dealt with a root issue yet. You might leave the job with a toxic boss, but unless you resolve the core father dynamic, guess what? The next boss or the next mentor will simply inherit that projection.
So the energy needs to shift radically.
Completely. It has to move away from trying to change the behavior of the boss or the spouse, which, let's face it, we have almost no control over.
Right.
And toward resolving the foundational issue within ourselves. If you can resolve the father dynamic at the base, the domino effect means all subsequent projections are either resolved or significantly lessened.
You stop seeing the boss as the father and start seeing him as just a boss. Maybe a difficult boss, but just a boss.
Exactly. We have to focus on internal agency. The sources refer to the story of Bartimaeus. Remember, when Jesus encountered him, he didn't just assume the blind man wanted to see. He asked a very specific question. What do you want me to do?
Powerful.
We have to liberate others to act in their own lives and focus our entire energy on what I can do about my feelings. The question has to change from, why didn't the boss like me and how can I fix his feelings?
What do I want to do about my feeling of being disliked, and what action does that require from me?
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for your own internal state.
Okay, that brings us neatly to the third dimension then, the behavioral aspect, the outward visible actions of self-care. This is where the rubber meets the road, maybe, where self-love is actually manifested in daily, practical ways.
Yes. Are you treating yourself like a valued guest in your own life?
That's a good question.
This is often where neglect hides in plain sight. Think about the classic rituals of self-neglect versus self-care. Are you taking necessary water breaks when you're engrossed in a task? Are you allowing yourself the small luxury of, say, massaging your own feet after a long day?
Or using the good candle. The expensive one you usually save only for when visitors arrive.
Exactly. For so many people, everything good. The best linens, the best room, the nicest dishes. It's all reserved for other people.
If a guest arrived by surprise, you'd immediately put on the theater of perfection, wouldn't you? Rush to make the house presentable, offer the best wine, ensure they were comfortable.
So why don't we apply that same standard of care to the guest who is always present? Ourselves.
It reflects a profound, measurable lack of self-respect when you put it like that.
It really does. I was particularly struck by that personal anecdote about hydration. The host realizing he wasn't drinking enough water on long flights, not out of forgetfulness, but consciously.
Because he wanted to avoid inconveniencing his neighbors by having to get up multiple times for the restroom.
Yes. And the deeper psychological implication there is just huge. It's a profound lack of auto-amor. You're prioritizing a stranger's minor, momentary comfort over your own basic physical requirement for hydration.
Wow. It suggests that my physical needs are secondary to the potential discomfort of a person I will literally never see again.
Exactly. And the power of correcting that small daily disrespect was apparently immediate and physical. Just prioritizing hydration led to immense benefits. Even people commenting he looked younger.
That's incredible.
It really reinforces that intimacy with self, much like spiritual intimacy, requires these daily conscious gestures of care. Listening to comforting music, wearing comfortable clothes when you feel down, consciously preparing a special meal just for yourself.
It's that daily decision, isn't it? If I were having a difficult day, would I allow my most beloved guest to wear ripped pajamas, skip meals, and ignore their basic physical needs?
Of course not.
So we have to provide at least that minimum level of care for ourselves before we can even think about sustainably providing it for anyone else.
Okay, so once we start embedding these three dimensions of self-esteem, cognitive, emotive, and behavioral, we're better equipped to navigate the more challenging external territory, like dealing with mistakes and, well, other people.
Right. We have to learn to look at failure through a lens of transformation, not just condemnation.
Yes, this connects right back to the wisdom of Thomas Edison, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I now know 10,000 ways how not to make the electric light.
We need to apply that same kind of scientific rigor to our relationships and life choices. Why did the last relationship fail? We actually need to document our relational failures.
To extract the learning, to make sure we don't just repeat the exact same mistake 1,000 times over with different people.
Makes sense. And this maturation process, it leads directly to setting mature boundaries, doesn't it?
It has to. A primary consequence of developing genuine self-love is gaining the clarity and the confidence to stop tolerating people who demean you or humiliate you or employ toxic behaviors like those passive-aggressive jokes or subtle sabotage.
So when you're confronting toxic behavior, the shift in responsibility is absolutely essential. You have to move from just blaming the other person, the fault was yours for being so rude, to
accepting accountability for your own past behavior. Okay, the fault was mine for allowing this behavior in the past, but I will not accept it anymore. That is mature boundary statement.
You're not necessarily ending the relationship, but you are restructuring it.
Exactly. You establish new, clear rules of engagement. I will not listen to that language anymore. I demand respect. And you have to acknowledge, realistically, that the other person might repeat the behavior. They're conditioned to the old pattern.
Right. Habits are hard to break.
So your commitment must be to repeat the boundary clearly and calmly until the new behavior is conditioned. That's how you ensure the relationship continues, but maturely.
We also need to be really vigilant about the subtlety of sabotage, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Toxic people can sometimes appear to be helping, maybe offering advice, while subtly undermining you with criticism that's kind of couched as concern.
Right. I'm only telling you this because I care.
Exactly that. Self-love requires the confidence to say, gently but firmly, look, I know you might not have intended that as criticism, but that is actually how I'm receiving it right now, and I need you to be more direct or maybe just offer support.
This connects directly to self-criticism too, doesn't it?
It does. We often find that people with really negative self-esteem criticize themselves so extensively, so constantly, that they become utterly unable to tolerate any external criticism.
Why is that?
Because their internal cup of self-accusation is already completely full, overflowing even. So any tiny external drop of criticism just causes it to spill over into a huge defensive reaction.
Whereas the mature approach, even when external criticism is delivered poorly, maybe harshly or without any delicacy,
is to learn to discount the form to keep the content. You try to set aside the angry tone or the bad delivery, but you still look for the potential light or benefit contained within the feedback itself.
But we have to be careful, though, right? Not to swing into a radical rejection of all external opinions.
Absolutely critical distinction. The opinion of an important, loving figure, like maybe your mother, even if her advice seems based on outdated social patterns, like discouraging divorce because that's all she knew.
That still requires respect and careful listening. It's coming from a different place.
Exactly. That's distinct from, say, a toxic coworker who is clearly trying to sabotage you to get your job. Discerning the source and the intention behind the criticism is vital.
Okay. Finally, in this context of choices and failure, we need to talk about overcoming indecision and blame. Why do people struggle so much with indecision?
Well, often it's not just that they don't trust their own choices. More accurately, perhaps, they want to avoid paying the price of those choices.
Ah, how does that work?
They seek others' opinions constantly. That way, if things go well, they can take the credit. See, I chose wisely with a little input. But if things go wrong...
The blame falls squarely on the other person. Well, you told me to do it.
Exactly. It's the complete inverse of self-agency.
This really speaks volumes about the wisdom in that anecdote about the therapist friend's son.
Oh, yes.
The boy had made a tough decision, kicking a friend out of his party. And when his father started to scold him for how he handled it, the son stopped him right there.
What did he say again?
He said, "Dad, I didn't ask you to reprehend me. I want you to help me resolve it."
Wow. That is the absolute essence of transformation right there. If the person already feels bad, if they already recognize their error and are suffering the consequences, just repeating the punishment only compounds the suffering.
It's what Buddhism calls the suffering of suffering.
Precisely. The mature corrective posture isn't to dwell on the error. It's to work together immediately on the solution. Okay, that happened. What are we going to do next? How are we going to fix this?
So if the mature, conscious self doesn't waste energy blaming others or justifying its own mistakes, then what does it do?
It transforms. And maybe the ultimate example of this instantaneous shift from potentially paralyzing guilt to profound, decisive action is found in the story of Saul of Tarsus.
Okay, Saul, tell us more.
Well, to really understand the power of his transformation, we have to first appreciate the sheer scale of his error, his failure. Saul wasn't some, uneducated zealot. He was a profound intellectual.
Right, he was a disciple of Gamaliel, a doctor of law, a cosmopolitan, even a Roman citizen.
Exactly. He was rigorously coherent in his belief that he was doing the right thing by actively persecuting the early Christians.
He was acting on deeply held beliefs, however wrong they turned out to be.
And yet we realize that his entire heritage, all the prophets, all the ancestors, centuries of Jewish history, had prepared for the messiahs who had just arrived. And despite being this intellectual powerhouse, Saul utterly failed to recognize him.
His intellectual coherence actually led him to radical error.
Precisely. So when Christ confronts him on the road to Damascus, the common human response, the one we see play out every single day in therapy rooms and arguments and regrets, should have been self-destruction.
Paralyzing guilt, like how could I, the great doctor of law, have missed the central event of history?
Or intense justification. This isn't what I was expecting. It wasn't clear. You tricked me. He had every intellectual resource available to argue his innocence or just descend into complete self-loathing.
But he does none of that.
None of it. His immediate and utterly transformative response is pure, mature action. What do you want me to do?
Just like the boy at the party.
Exactly. That phrase encapsulates the essence of mature self-love and self-agency. He didn't waste a single moment on self-accusation or blame or excuses. He accepted the error and instantly pivoted to the solution. Okay, I was wrong. Now what?
And we should also note the nature of the instruction he actually received. This seems critical for our own lives, too.
Yes. Jesus didn't provide a full, detailed 30-year life plan, did he? He didn't lay out the name change to Paul, the specific locations of all the churches he would found, the specific trials he'd face, his eventual death under Nero.
That would have been overwhelming.
Completely counterproductive and terrifying. Instead, Jesus gave him only the next manageable small task. Enter the city, and it will be told to you what you must do.
Just the next step.
Just the next step. And this reveals so much about how our own evolution works. Transformation doesn't arrive in one giant flash of perfection. It happens step by step. Fidelity in the small next thing proves you're ready for fidelity in the great thing.
Saul was given the next city gate, and by walking through it, he proved he was ready for whatever the subsequent instruction was.
We don't get the full manual for our lives. We just get the next city gate. and that makes the impossible transformation manageable.
It's the complete opposite of that paralyzing X-Men ideal we talked about.
Exactly. Instead of needing to be perfect immediately, you only need to be ready to ask, okay, what is the next right thing I should do? Hashtag outro.
So what we've really discussed today is the practice of a mature, lucid kind of love process we're calling auto-amor. It's a self-care that's less concerned with external standards or accolades or that public chancella, and much more concerned with internal fidelity and this ongoing dynamic transformation.
And this mature care, it generates the essential conditions for actually loving others effectively. Because true self-love creates the necessary boundaries that refuse denigration. It gives you the confidence to say, look, I know you might not have meant it that way, but I won't accept that behavior, and here's how we can relate maturely going forward.
We really must always connect this back to our past efforts too, shouldn't we? What feels little today, that small moment of self-care, that minute of meditation you manage, that boundary you successfully held for 5 seconds.
That was the much you were working so hard for yesterday or last week or last year.
Yeah.
We have to celebrate those steps taken.
And use our persistent dissatisfaction not as a reason for self-loathing, but as that tranquil sign, the insatisfaction tranquila, that we're stronger now, we're ready for the next, maybe bigger challenge.
Exactly. We want to leave you with the really powerful, profound message contained in that Brazilian song by Danny Black, featuring the legendary Milton Nascimento. It's called Mayor, which means greater. And the lyrics, they capture this relentless yet gentle transformation perfectly. I am greater than I was before. I am better than I was yesterday. Only time will reveal who I am.
Wow, only time will reveal who I am. That's beautiful.
Isn't it? It's the essence of surrendering to the process. Maybe a surrender to the potter of souls, as some traditions might say, who invites this gentle transformation.
Right.
Sometimes the potter twists the clay slowly, gently. Sometimes maybe a hard knock is needed to correct a fundamental flaw, or perhaps even breaking the vessel entirely to refashion it. But the potter always loves the process and loves the stage you are currently in, regardless of how messy or imperfect it feels from the inside.
We have to embrace this self-care, this dynamic transformation.
Because only then, perhaps, will we finally understand the profound meaning of what it truly means to love your neighbor as yourself. The self-love has to come first, not as some selfish act, but as the absolute foundation for mature, healthy connection.
So here's a final thought for you to reflect on as you move forward. The sources suggest that perhaps the divine, in their infinite mercy, might be actively sabotaging your plans to be unhappy.
Ooh, I like that. Sabotaging your plans to be unhappy.
Yeah. So what conditional standards, what self-humiliation engines, what transactional plans are you still holding on to that are ultimately designed, maybe unconsciously, to keep you unhappy? And what does true, mature auto-amor ask you to discard right now?
Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful and blessed day.